This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's this week's edition of the Terry's Talkin podcast with Terry Pluto. I am your host, David Campbell. We're taping this late on Tuesday afternoon, the 24th of June. What's going on, Terry? How are you?
I am all set. Raring to go for the podcast.
Let's do it. So I guess we'll start with the Guardians today, since they're kind of the hot topic in town. And then I know we have some other stuff we want to get into with the Cavs, some Ty Jerome discussion. And we've got another really good Tom Hamilton email for the end of the podcast, so we'll get into that as well.
Okay.
We got an email here that I wanted to read to kind of frame the discussion here with the Guardian. So why don't I get into that, and then we'll kind of go from there. How's that sound?
You're the host. You're the master host.
Okay.
So that way, if it goes bad, it's all on you. It's kind of like being the sports editor of the department. Whether you messed up or not, you messed up. It was messed up.
The podcast is a democracy, not a dictatorship, Terry. This is your podcast. So, all
right.
No,
do you know what the best form of government is?
What's that?
A benevolent dictatorship.
Oh, I was going to say a plutocracy, because it would be a...
Yeah, well, it depends. That can go either way.
All right. Well, here's this email. Yes. It's from Tom Byler, and Tom is from Lewisburg, Kansas. He's a native Buckeye, he says. And Tom writes in, he says, with the Guardians putting an exclamation point on not making the playoffs, finishing above 500, we now have who will they trade to look forward to. With Bieber on a 1 year, half a year in reality deal, it would seem likely they will try to get him healthy enough to start a couple of games, then trade him for all they can get. Santana also on a 1 year deal. Seems like a good bet to be traded. No one else. They cannot trade Jose or Quan or Cade Smith has any trade value, except for maybe Class A, if he can get on a hot streak before the deadline. This reminds me of the 70s, when we always dreaded the trade deadline because we knew the one or two talented players on the roster were likely to be traded for a couple of suspects that would never quite reach their potential. Sigh, says Tom. So thanks for that, Tom. I know this ain't the 70s, Terry.
I mean, right now in the 70s, at this point, being a couple games over 500 with the All-Star game, you throw a parade for the team. I mean, it was that bad back then for the most part.
So I wanted to read that email because we're kind of a month away here, a little more than a month. The trade deadline is July 31st. And there was a really good debate, I thought, on cleveland.com the last couple of days. Hoynesy wrote a post saying, hey, the Guardians should stay the course and not really blow this thing up, because last year, they were way ahead, and then they were tied in August, and then they won the division. So a lot of things can change. Joe Noga also had a companion post, and his thing was basically they should pull the trigger and trade a prospect to bring somebody in to help them in the outfield and bring some hitting. So we've kind of been going back and forth on this, Terry. I just wanted to kind of make sure you were kind of the opinion last week that they should kind of just ride it out here, because things can change quickly and we're starting to see the pitching come around. But I don't know. There's a lot swirling around here. How do you feel about all this?
I'll tell you, one of the difficult things about this season, and we've talked about different players, struggling, is right before the trading deadline last year, they traded Jose Tena and I think another prospect and for Lane Thomas, with the idea being this be a 2 year, or at least a year and a half project for this guy. Right-handed hitter against left-handed pitching. could play a couple outfield spots, steal bases, hit some home runs. He immediately went 4 for 55 after he was traded to Cleveland. Then he got hot, which went all the way through the playoffs. Then he opened this season, looked like the guy that was 4 for 55, and he had plantar fascia in the foot. And since he just hasn't hit at all. And that was a kind of move that they hope they'll move on the margins. In other words, trading a second-rated prospect in Tanya and hoping that you would get something out of Thomas, and they haven't. That hurt them. But when you talk about, by the way, who to trade, they got a whole bunch of guys that they could trade that people would love to get. We could talk about this. I mean, Luis Ortiz, Ciccone, these two young starters. I mean, teams would jump at them. There's been some talk about trading Clase, which is just, I think, a really, really bad idea, unless you're getting something powerful, because Clase has such a team-friendly contract. And I know he's been doing a Bob Wickman imitation, or I remember Earl Weaver had a reliever in Baltimore. I haven't done a Weaver story for about a month, so I'm allowed. And he used to call this guy, Don Stanhouse was his name. He was very much like Wickman. He would come in and walk guys and let him steal bases and kind of get out of there. He used to call him six-pack Stanhouse, but he didn't mean it in terms of the beer. He meant it that during the ninth inning, Earl would smoke about 6 packs of cigarettes, watching him. The unfiltered Raleighs, as I remember. And so that was one of his many nicknames. And hopefully Clase will get a little bit more dominant as he was. But that's, even at his salary, Nat, if he isn't even a closer, he's still a really good buy when you look at what these guys make. So that's where they're at.
You don't get deals like that with Clase very often.
No.
That you've got somebody who's one of the best in the business at that rate of salary. Yeah, that's a premium position, and you got a bargain basement price. So I think that would not make sense at all.
And everybody will just put Kate Smith in there, or Hunter Gaddis, or we've seen those guys have had a few hiccups too this year. They haven't been as unhittable as the year before, and I'd rather have more good arms out there than fewer.
Okay, so time is on the Guardians' side here, right? So they are only, I think, a half a game out of the last wild card spot at 39 and 37, even though they're 8.5 games behind the Tigers. So they have a few weeks here to let things kind of harden, for lack of a better word, and they can kind of see the direction things are going. Poinsy was pointing out that the starting pitching is coming around, that there's some more help on the way. And so are you you're the GM, let's say you're Mike Chernoff and Chris Antonetti, are you basically going to wait a few weeks and see how things look? Or if you had a deal, something like a Lane Thomas where you have some player control, would you make that move if you think
one move sense? I'd probably make in the next week or so, assuming he stays healthy, is bringing up Chase DeLauter. I would make that move, because maybe he solves one of your problems. Right now, we've had kind of been burned of players coming from the minors that come up and not do much. Forget like in 2022, whether it was SpongeBob coming up, or I think Will Brennan, several other of those guys really helped during that season. Right now at AAA, DeLauter's hitting .297 with a .904 OPS. He's got 3 homers. I love this: 16 walks, 11 strikeouts, 75 at bats. And I've seen some tape of him making some nice catches in the outfield. Whenever this guy's been healthy, he's hit. And I don't care if he's a left-handed hitter or what. And right now, anybody that could hit and maybe drive in some runs, has to be of interest. And
just to shake things up too, right?
Yeah,
change the dynamic a little bit in the outfield.
And I know we could turn around and you look at Columbus. It's Christmas. It's Christmas time again. Down in Columbus, 313, OPS 986, 4 homers, 12 RBIs. This is a guy that had like 3 extra base hits and 100 at bats or whatever it was. It was terrible. And he goes down there and just starts clubbing the ball. A guy that's really hurt them, and David, I will ask you this one. And that's David Fry. He's 5 for 33 since he came up. 5 for 33 with 16 strikeouts, 3 walks. And I paid no attention to this. I just happened to look at it now because I was wondering what did he do in his minor league rehab stuff? He was 3 for 29. So is there something wrong with? Has he come back too soon from that Tommy John surgery? I don't know. But this is a guy that made the All-Star team last year.
And he's been talking about getting more comfortable, but like, how long can you wait? Right.
I mean, right. I mean, do you send him? I think he's got an option left. Do you send him to AAA and just say play every day? He's your DH every day down there. I don't know. Just so he can get consistent at bats, because it doesn't matter whether he's facing righties or lefties. He's doing nothing right now. Now I'm not quite there at that point yet, but I'm getting there, because he can say whatever he wants. I mean, you got 16 strikeouts and 33 at bats. It's just
so even the DeLauter thing. Fans have kind of been clamoring for that for like the last month, and I think the move needs to be made, and I'll tell you why. A lot of teams are getting bumps from their young star talent right now. I just saw before we started taping here, the Reds are bringing up Chase Burns.
Yeah.
Top, and who I think was the number 2 pick in last year's draft behind Travis Bazzana, right? Wasn't he number 2? So he's coming up tonight. I think he's making his big league debut for the Reds. The Guardians just saw Nick Kurtz, right, with the A's.
How about Wake Forest? I believe Burns played at Wake Forest too. What a program they have for baseball.
Some college program. But like the Royals, we talked about Caglianone coming up and kind of giving them a little bit of a different look. The Angels have brought up Christian Moore, and the Astros have brought up Cam. I think the Cam Smith. I think the Guardians need just a little. Bazzana's not ready, right, because of the injuries and everything.
Well, I mean, he's got a lat injury, and frankly, he's got to. I want to see this guy really hit before you bring him up.
Right. So I think the better odds there, bring him up, and you can always send him back down, right? If things give him a 3-4 weeks and see how it goes.
See how it goes. That's right. I mean, then he would be, if he goes back down, he's among the 85%. People may get tired of me saying that, among the 85% of players who end up going back to the minors, and Jose went back at least twice. So that's Burns did play at Wake Forest, as did Kuntz. So those are guys there, and so we're not talking about bringing up a guy that's just was in college last year. And DeLauter, I mean, he would be here now if he just could stay healthy for a few months. I mean, one baseball guy said, "Bring him up before he gets hurt again," and he was kind of being semi-sarcastic, but there's some of that, by the way, with pitchers. You mentioned Burns. Now, if a guy looks pretty good, and it seems like half of these guys, or whatever, the last percentage I saw was 36% of guys having Tommy John surgery, and it's going up every year. It's like, well, let's just get him up here and get some innings out of him before you got to go operate on him. It's kind of, there's another form of Moneyball. It really is.
So a couple things I just wanted to highlight from the stories we were talking about here. Just for some perspective, Hoynesy was mentioning that after 76 games last year, the Guardians were 50-26.
Yeah.
And had an 8-game lead. And then on August 27th, they were tied with the Royals. So that's how quickly things can change. And that was kind of what he's getting at, that, maybe it's a leap of faith, was Hoynesy's point. And then I wanted to mention in Joe Noga's story, he mentioned 3 people that might bring a veteran righty power hitting outfielder. And a few names he mentioned were Marcell Ozuna from Atlanta, Eugenio Suarez from Arizona, and Adolis Garcia from Texas. But Joe was writing about that you're going to have to give up like a Chase DeLauter or somebody like that to get one of these guys. And that might be too steep of a price for them. But those are some
I'm not. Maybe because I saw him in A-ball, like his first pro season, and just fell in baseball love with DeLauter. And I just would hate to see you trade this guy, and he goes and just actually does stay healthy and just starts raking. And maybe some of those veterans would help, but then you have this guy who's hitting 20 to 30 homers and driving in runs and playing a good right field. Remember, he was a closer at James Madison when he wasn't playing the outfield. He throws 92 miles an hour. I mean, he's that kind of athlete. The one spring training was 2 years ago. He hit like 480 or 420. I forgot what it was. Anytime the fall league, when he's played there, he's all everywhere. Even Chris Antonetti, I was talking to him about a month ago, and he said when he's been healthy for a while, he just starts to hit. Well, that takes care of that. And on top of that, it's not a guy that he can only hit. He can't play any position. He's your answer from terms athletically for right field. He runs fairly well. He's got a great throwing arm, and he's got a good sense of how to play the game.
And even if it doesn't work out and he has to go back down, I mean, we saw
Fine.
what Kyle Manzardo did last year after they brought him back up, and he kind of
Mhm.
learned how to DH,
Sure.
right? And the routine that's involved there. So starting the major league kind of mentality or
Mhm.
approach and letting him experience that, like, I don't know, there's not a lot of downside, it seems like, but
No, there's none. There really is none. That I don't see, because now he's playing 5 to 6 days a week. In the beginning, he started with 3 and 4 because he had that hernia surgery, and they were trying to build up his endurance and that. But he's playing quite a bit.
well, I did want to say thanks to Tom for the email to get us going on that. But yeah, the
Yep.
wild card really changes the equation here
Mhm.
in terms of look what the Tigers last year just getting in, barely getting in. You know, it was a wild card, and having the run they did. Uh, Once you get in, anything can happen.
And you change, like the Tigers last year just said we have Scooble and 47 relievers. Here we go, and it worked. I mean, you don't know what will spark you, and one way is to try to light a spark with a guy who's a viable prospect. The other guy he's playing down in Goodyear, and he'll soon be a Columbus. And a guy that I've liked is Juan Brito. I mean, he was hitting 291 when he broke his thumb. So he's back at. So you turn around, Brito at second, DeLauter at right. Maybe that lights the fire with the offense. You can't even score 4 runs a game. You got to do something.
Well, yeah, now that the pitching's coming around, if you can
Yeah.
get that runs per game up a little bit with some
Mm-hmm.
production, you might have something going. So, hey Terry, there was a line in Joe's story that I wanted to mention. When people talk about the Cavs, they talk about the championship window and Donovan Mitchell being here, you know, another couple of years before a player option and all that stuff. Joe said the urgency is clear. Jose is having another MVP caliber season at age 32.
Mm-hmm.
Wasting another prime year of his talent by failing to add offensive support seems short-sighted. So I find that interesting. A lot of NBA people talk about championship windows, and we can't waste time when LeBron is here or when Donovan Mitchell's here. Our team has to go for it. But you don't hear that so much in baseball. Do you think the Guardians owe it to Jose to try to make something happen
Okay,
this summer?
Since Jose signed his contract in 2022, they won, I think, was 92 games and went to the playoffs in 2022. Excuse me. In 23, they were below 500. Tito's last year, that odd year. Last year, I believe they won 91 games, went to the playoffs. Both years in the playoffs, they won a round. It's not like he was stuck on the Indians of the 70s. I mean, let's get real here. He's been, and I understand where Joe's coming from. You want to capitalize on that, but it isn't as if they just said, we'll just throw Jose out there and he could just be kind of the show and we don't care what else is around him.
No, but when LeBron was here, nobody said, "Well, you know what? If they don't make the finals this year, it's no big deal. We'll be, you know, they'll be back next year." Like baseball seems like, I mean, do the Guardians owe it to him to try and make something happen every year that they get into the
And
playoffs?
they owe
That's
it to
kind
the
of the question.
fans. They owe it to the fans to get to the playoffs and try to do something. The difference, David, is nothing is like basketball. Because unless Jose was going to be pitching, it would be like Jose pitches every game and also bats cleanup. That's what LeBron is. I'm
So
serious. That's what LeBron
it's
is.
like Otani.
Otani, even he can't pitch every game. But when you have LeBron or you have SGA, these great two-way players, game changers, dominating when they're on the floor. That's why basketball players, even in football, a quarterback doesn't play defense. Basketball is so unique because of that. It would be like having a great goalie, but in between, he's like fifth in the league in scoring too. I don't know how else to explain what a player like LeBron or these other guys are like because of how they impact the entire game. And that's why sometimes you say we have that, he's good enough to get us this far, and he just needs a little help. But he's going to carry a bigger load than Jose or anybody else. LeBron took 3 different teams to the NBA Finals 10 times in 14 years. Unprecedented. We will never see that again. We may see somebody go to the finals 10 times in 14 years, although I kind of doubt it, but not with 3 different teams. That showed his unique greatness. So when they talked about wasting that, it's like he took the Cavs in 07. He took Miami 4 times. Then he comes back, he takes the Cavs 4 times, and then he won a title with the Lakers. So actually, it's 4 different teams to the finals in 14 years, not 3. The Cavs twice, if you count it that way, however you want to view it. And it's just, it's a remarkable thing. I mean, the main thing that I see, if the if the Guardians kept going 72 and 90, I think Joe's case would be stronger.
Yeah, because there's so many moving parts on a baseball team.
Yes.
It's a different formula, is what you're saying, if I'm hearing you right.
Yeah, right. It is, and it's and the same thing there. You acquire a guy, he can only play one side of the ball, as they would say in football. He's not going to play both. It's a hard way to figure out, what is the best way, to build a winning team. When in the last, I'm trying to remember, if you look at teams that until last year, the Yankees had not been to the World Series since 2009. 2000
with all that money, and
all
the
that
talent.
money and all that. Granted, when you spend big, it kind of buys your way to the main table into the playoffs, but it doesn't get you there. And actually, I'm glad about that for baseball, because if it were best of 13 in all these different series of playoffs, you probably would keep getting Yankees, Dodgers, Red Sox, all that. But best of 5, best of 7, a lot of things can go wrong, and for good teams and good.
All right. I had one more topic I wanted to throw at you before we move on from the Guardians. I don't know if there's anything else you want to get into with baseball, but
yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
What's your topic?
Well, you mentioned Brito a couple minutes ago, and I've been thinking a lot about the middle infield and how things are so much different. And how do you? I looked up some stats, but I wanted to see. Do you feel like the Guardians are better off with Arias at short than Rocchio last year? The same or worse off? And in terms of what they're getting, not just offensively but defensively. And I did a little research, but I wanted to know what your gut feeling was.
What does it say? That's the problem when you can't jump on anything.
Oh yeah, I was just looking for your gut reaction, but yeah, I can run through some of this, sure. So I looked up the numbers. Yeah, so Rocchio, everybody remembers the playoff by Rocchio last year, right? But during the regular season, he batted like 206, right? Yeah, and 614 was his OPS, 8 homers and 36 RBI in 143 games. So not a great season. Arias in 2025, and this is in all games because he hasn't played short every game, obviously. 230 and a 653 OPS with 5 homers and 27 ribbies in 71 games. So basically half of what Rocchio played last year, 71 versus 143, but he's already got 5 home runs compared to 8, 27 RBIs compared to 36. So it seems like they're getting a little bit better offensive production than they got from Rocchio last year. And again, I was just trying to look for reasons that their record isn't as good, right? And if the shortstop play, either offensively or defensively, was down, then that might help guide them in terms of what might be ahead.
And of course, the problem was Rocchio this year couldn't catch a ground ball. I mean, his defense was horrible this year.
Yeah.
Last year was good. It was a B plus. B plus. Go ahead.
I got some of that too. So Rocchio's fielding percentage last year was .974. And his fielding percentage this year in 35 games was like .945. I think I wrote over that. But anyway, a 30% drop. And then there's also a stat where they measure your defensive runs saved per 1,200 innings. Yeah. And last year, Rocchio had 12, and this year he was -21. That basically measures your putouts and throwouts per unit time, per 1,200
I'll tell
innings.
you, that thing, I don't get so much into the real minutia of how they measured it, but I have found in general the fielding Bible, which does allow the run saves versus that, kind of matches the eye test. As I said, Rocchio I thought was horrible defensively this year. I didn't know the stats, but
Yeah,
he
well,
was.
you were right
And I
on that.
and I thought he was like a B plus, A minus at shortstop last year. I think he had 12 errors all year. And I mean, part of playing shortstop is making the average plays. That was when Omar was here. What made him so great, David, isn't just that the spectacular things. I mean, one year I think he played 140 some games at 3 errors. If he had 10 errors in a year, I mean, he would tell you how terrible that was. So that is a key there. I just have trouble buying into Arias too. I don't know if that's where that's going to go.
Yeah, but I think a
I
lot of
don't like.
fans might be thinking the defense isn't there, and their putouts and assists per 9 innings played, it was 3.68 for Rocchio and
Yeah.
3.63. So it seems like it's kind of a wash with maybe a little bit more offense coming from Arias. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm looking for variables and reasons for
Well,
Guardians fans to be hopeful or worried. So
center field defensively has been horrible this year on those things. Second base is certainly a big drop because Jimenez is the premier defensive second baseman. And first base is better with Carlos. I did look at that than they were with Naylor. Jose's solid at third. The outfield, it kind of, well, Quan's extraordinary. But their team defense just kind of ranked right around average this year, where last year is like in the top 3 or top 5, depending on which of those things you looked at. But I wanted to bring up there the Jimenez trade since the Toronto's in town.
yeah, so you emailed me about
Yeah.
a sleeper from one of the trades that you wanted to talk about. Let's get into that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I understood from an economic reason why they traded Jimenez last year. 104 million for 5 years. I dig deeper and had some of the stats of how even last year, whatever he hit 240 or whatever it was, that it was considered a really soft 240 because they looked at all those secondary stats and that, which sometimes is relevant and sometimes it isn't. But they just did not have much confidence in him, coming around and being able to hit as he did a couple years ago when he hit, when he hit 297 and did some really good things that led to them giving him, the big contract. I mean, last year he had 252 with OPS of 638, and now this year, I mean, this is something else, David. He's batting 192 for the Blue Jays, 574 OPS. It's just, he's got 9 steals. He has stolen 30 bases the 2 previous years. 32. I mean, he hit 4 home runs, but he hit 3 in the first 10 games of the year. Only 6 doubles. I don't know what happened to him. I mean, he's hopeless. Now, he's still really good defensively. But if he were doing that and you're going, oh my goodness, and you got this guy basically at 20 million a year for the next 5 years, I mean, that would have been really damaging. While, Ortiz was part of that. It was a 3-way trade with Pittsburgh. Ortiz was part of that. He's 4-8 with a 4.30 ERA. Over the last, I think, 7 starts, he's like 2-4 with a 3.76. I don't know. What do you think of Ortiz?
I think he's gotten better and better since spring
Yeah.
training, and yeah, I think they're getting what they were hoping they would get, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we're getting better. Nick Sandlin was in that deal too. He's only pitched 9 2/3 innings, allowed 2 runs. He had the dreaded lat injury. He's just coming back from it now. Now, there are 2 other guys in the trade. Pitchers, young pitchers in Class A. One was Michael Kennedy. He's had a 3.33 ERA. He's only pitched 16 innings at Lake County. Has a bit of a knee problem. But here's a guy that could be the big sleeper in the deal. And I remember when they got him, they told me that they really liked him. By the way, another Wake Forest guy, Josh Hartle, left-handed pitcher. He's at Lake County right now, 5-1, 2.73 ERA. And I bet they'll probably move him up to Double-A. He was a high draft pick because remember the Pirates were involved in this. So you certainly right now would trade Jimenez for Ortiz and Hartle. I mean, do it over and over again.
Yes.
Yeah, you wouldn't even think about it. So that's a trade, that it looks very good. And then the guy that has surprised me, because I looked at Ortiz's stats and a little bit of the video before they got him, I thought he's an interesting prospect, and there's something there. But the guy that really didn't show much when he came to the majors was Ciccone. And, look at how he's doing now. Came in that trade from for Arizona. So that's very positive because two young starters under team control basically forever. Um, and it would be nice to have Josh Naylor, but really not having Naylor, I think has hurt the team some, but not a ton. It's just they're not getting stuff, as you mentioned, from not only, Arias has really cooled off, Anzardo's cooled off. They wanted to create opportunities for these guys to really come in and take control in the lineup, and they've not done it.
I think in some ways they've missed Naylor's clubhouse and
Could be.
dugout presence more than a lot of the other stuff that he did on the field. Like he gets guys fired up. He's
Mm-hmm.
always up on the railing of the dugout yelling at guys and smiling when they have a big hit. And it just seems like the Guardians are missing a little bit of that juice that he brought last year.
That's
And I
probably
don't know where
true.
it comes from, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably true. I mean, but basically, he had 31 homers for over 108 RBIs. He was bad after the All-Star break, but he was great in the first half. Like he's great in the first half now again. But in terms of, I'm not saying it was a straight equal Santana with Naylor, but it's not as if they went from a grade A player at first to a C minus. They didn't at all. I mean, Santana's above average player, and he's good defensively. Naylor was not. But the rest of these guys that they were counting on, whether it was Big Christmas or Lane Thomas or Rocchio, remember he started there. Second base has been just a Sneeman's taken it over to an extent, but he's a platoon player or a part-time player. And I don't know, center field, Martinez, I thought he would be doing better than he has. So when you say, all right, David, I ask you this. Of the young guys that came up, say, in the last year and a half, who are producing in the lineup?
Man, not many. Like, who would you say? I mean,
That's
it's
the
hard to think.
problem. You would
Yeah.
start to say Manzardo at the end. He at the end of last year and then the first 6 weeks of this year, and then he's really tailed off. And, I mean, you could say Arias, but they were hoping this guy would hit for some more power and just be more of a impact player than he has been offensively. I mean, defensively, he's got a great arm. He's pretty good over there at short. But you just go around, and there's nobody in center field. It's that gets back to, do they trade for an arm? But see, I'd rather play the DeLauter card soon, see how that goes before you turn around and trade a couple of prospects you like for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, the Guardians are back home after their long West Coast swing. They've got 3 games Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday here against Andres Jimenez and the Toronto Blue Jays, and then they have a home series against St. Louis Cardinals Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then next week they head to Wrigley Field to take on the Chicago Cubs
All right, I
for
just
4th of
decided to
July
look
week.
something up here because they traded Jose Tena for Lane Thomas. I just wondered how he was doing, and the answer is he's playing quite a bit for Washington. 44 games, 248, 690 OPS. He's probably average at short, so he wouldn't have solved the shortstop problems either.
Well, we will know a lot more about this team, I think, in 2-3 weeks in terms of
Sure.
the vibe, where they're headed, and what they might be doing. So, all right, anything else on the Guardians, Terry?
That's it.
All right. Hey, let's take a break right here. When we come back, I know you have been working on a column about why it's a new era for the Cavs after the NBA Finals, and we'll get into that and more when we return on Terry's Talkin'. We are back on Terry's Talkin'. Terry, I don't know where June went, man. We've been talking for weeks. You have an appearance on Wednesday, June 25th at the Avon Lake Public Library, and like that's tomorrow already, and the month is
Yes,
gone.
it is.
But I know you always draw some big crowds, but I think it's at 6:30 tomorrow night, the Avon Lake Public
Yep,
Library,
I'm
right?
really looking forward to it. I haven't had one for a while, and I know when I was at Avon like several years ago, the crowd was big, and most of them are. I mean, let's face it, it's free, so If your life is boring, you can come over out there, and if you don't like it, the old double your money back thing is in place. And I take questions and talk to people, and generally it's a really good time. I mean, it's interesting. I'll say, how many of you heard me speak before? And like 2/3 of the hands go up, which makes me feel good. And also because so many, sometimes I have kind of a message I begin with about different things. And then we really open it up to questions and that. And I could do this talk tomorrow and do one 6 weeks from now. And, more than half of it will be a lot different just because of what happens in the news. I mean, sports certainly, even in the quote boring seasons, never changes. There's always stuff coming on. It's never changing, meaning that it always changes.
Always drama in sports. It's
Mm-hmm.
part of what makes it great. So, and again, the address there is 32649 Electric Boulevard. And Terry, I know you sign books, and if people want to bring your books and get them signed, you're always glad to do that. So it should be fun tomorrow. Again, the 25th, Wednesday the 25th at 6:30 at the Avon Lake Public Library. All right, let's talk some basketball here, Terry.
Mm-hmm.
So the Thunder won Game 7, and a really sad night for the league when Tyrese Halliburton went down with that Achilles injury, which you hate to see. And I know you have some experience with Achilles injuries, but I know you've been working on a column, and we kind of teased this before the break about why this is a new era for the Cavs and for the NBA. Why don't you talk about that for a minute? We'll get into the Thunder and kind of what's ahead for the Cavs here.
Well, the gamblers, the guys in the know. I always love. I think I forgot who was on one of the stations. One of the Brent Murthberger says, "My guys in the desert." I always like that.
You're looking live at my guys in the desert.
Guys in the desert, and they know what's going to happen, as opposed to my guys in Parma or somewhere. But anyway, the guys in the desert have made the Cavs the favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference and go to the finals. And part of it is we're in a new era in two ways, of at least in the Eastern Conference. It is the era of the Achilles injury and the era of the second apron. And it is pretty remarkable in the playoffs, the big name stars that blew their Achilles. Halliburton was the last one. Now, he was playing on a bad calf muscle for a couple of those games. Then, of course, Jason Tatum blew his Achilles when he was playing the Knicks and the playoffs. And then Damian Lillard blew his Achilles when he was playing the Pacers. And when you're talking about Achilles injuries, you're looking at 8 to 12 months of a rehab. Kevin Durant took 18 months. Some other guys have taken 12. And it's an injury most guys do come back from, but it's a nasty one. I can tell you that, having had the surgery. And so the guys in the desert looked at this and said, let's see, Indiana, they won't have Halliburton. If he does come back, it'll be like right around this time of year. And how good will he be? And the Celtics, they don't have Tatum. And the same thing applies. And Milwaukee's sort of irrelevant, especially if they happen to trade Giannis. But then you have the second apron thing coming in, which is this part of the salary cap that if you spend X amount of money, but the problem with, quote, being in a second apron isn't just that it costs you zillions of dollars to sign a free agent. What it does is it limits the moves you can make. It really restricts what type of free agents you can sign. It's almost like you're almost stuck just signing guys on minimum contracts. If you go to make a trade, it's like it has to be a one-for-one trade. In other words, say you're trading Darius Garland, who's going to make, I forgot, it's like $30 million next year. You couldn't take two guys back to make $30 million. You'd have to find for your cap another guy making $30 million. I mean, rarely do you see that. And you look at what Boston just did. One of my favorite players, boy, would I love to have seen him at least a couple of years ago, Drew Holiday. They just traded him to Portland because they want to get out of the apron thing. And Holiday's going to be 36, and he had 3 years and $100 million left in his contract. They traded him for Anafree Simmons, who's in the last year of his contract. He's a guy that can score a lot and doesn't guard anybody. But mostly it was to get out from under the apron. They're still like over there, and they might trade Porzingis. So you're going to see, especially coming up before July 1st, that's when this whole apron thing kicks in, some other big names being traded. And now the Cavs are like pulling at the apron strings. I think right now they're a little bit over it, but they could get under it. So we'll see what they do. But that's the landscape. 3 Achilles, 8 injuries, 2 to guys with teams that would be considered that they were both healthy, favorites to win the East, and so the guys in the desert have decided that either Cleveland or New York comes out of it, mostly because they didn't have guys having an Achilles surgery. Now Cavs have Garland, and they still have not. I've not been able to get a real good line on what kind of surgery was this. You're talking 4 to 5 months or more in the big toe. But I guess it's not an Achilles, so they figure that's better than the alternatives.
Ooh, all right. So I guess the big thing hanging out there in terms of the salary cap situation, Terry, is the Ty Jerome deal.
Right.
And Jimmy Watkins, our colleague, had a nice breakdown, and his point was like the Cavs should not mess around with Ty Jerome. Just get it done because it's not worth letting him go because, like you were talking about, they can't really replace him with a comparable player. So do you think the Cavs should just pay him whatever, even if it's 14 whatever $million to and then there's the escalator for the second apron where you're gonna have to pay a bunch of tax on that,
I
right?
think it becomes like an $80 million contract for $46 million or whatever.
Yes. Yep. It's like a premium that they toss on there. Yep.
Yeah. And you sit there, go for Ty Jerome, who couldn't get the ball up the court against the Pacers. I mean, you really, to me, it's a tough call. When you start talking about that kind of money, the 4 years, the max you give them is 4 years at $14 million a year, something like that. And I'm like, I don't know, just because I'd rather have an alternative to see if that would keep me out of the apron where I can make other moves. What I had over the weekend is I talked to some top Cavs people, and the discussion actually came along to Craig Porter Jr. And I said, you guys blew it. You should have played him more, especially in the Indiana series. He could help you. And a couple of the Cavs type people agreed with me. He goes, we wouldn't have won the series, but we should have. And I said, well, what's the problem? And they told me, he said, Craig Porter Jr., he's a really nice kid. He shows up on time, all that. But they want him, if you want to be a point guard or whatever, they want some fire from him. First in the gym, that kind of guy, last to leave. Play with a sense of desperation because that's what it takes. And, I'm not saying he could be as good as TJ McConnell, but you see him, McConnell comes in, impacts the game. And I'll tell you, Porter has the same ball handling skills as McConnell when he's at his best. Now, McConnell's got more ways to score, but McConnell can't make threes very well either. Everybody's all hung up on the 3-point game thing. Well, I'll tell you one thing, McConnell is certainly no great 3-point shot, but boy, he gets that offense going. Porter could do this if they could get him lined up mentally the right way. And remember, I'm saying there's nothing wrong with him. This is not a kid with problems, but maybe he just doesn't know how good he could be. And I would be sitting there, and I bet Kenny Atkinson will start showing him McConnell and maybe a couple other guards you like, say, this is who you need to be. And to get there, you've got to do more than you're doing. And if you get there, you got a chance to make some real money because I believe McConnell's last contract was really rich. It's like, I don't know, 18 million a year or something like that. I have to look it up. And, he never saw that coming. So that's an easy way internally. The other guy, and I do think Jason Tyson, as a wing player, has some ability. His ball handling is pretty decent. In fact, they used to run him as a point forward in college when he was at Cal. So Kenny's going to have to look at different ways to do this. It'd be nice to have Jerome, but I'm just not going to go crazy about Ty Jerome. I disagree with Jimmy on that.
So you'd be fine if he stays, and you're fine if he goes.
It depends on the deal. I'm into the price thing. Two years at X amount as opposed to, that kind of thing.
You were mentioning McConnell. I didn't realize this. Mark Bona from our newsroom. He's the son of Susie McConnell Serio, who used to play for the Cleveland Rockets.
Yeah.
Which I did not realize.
And you know what? I didn't. That's how she played. I remember that she played the same way, like a maniac, and in a good way. I mean,
flying up and down the court.
Up and down the court, and and you could just see that, TJ is just that way. And you all times you look at those guys and you think they don't have that much of athletic ability. No, they do, but they then turn around and they take it and to another higher level. McConnell signed because he had always bounced from team to team, and now he signed a 4-year, $45 million contract. How about that, Craig Porter? There's the money. It's out there for you. And of course, when he comes off the bench, people in Indiana go crazy. See, that's the other one. You bring that energy to it, and that's that right, and for good reason. And that's the kind of thing that maybe Porter can at least get approach that. This is a key part for Kenny Atkinson. He was brought in here as a guy to develop players. That's his reputation. That's what he part of it was get the big four to play together in that, and also develop the younger players because the Cavs knew as they were dealing with their salary cap concerns, the apron coming, they weren't going to make a ton of big moves anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the improvement has to come from within because it can't come from without. So this is what they knew it was going to be. And I mean, even if they had made the finals this year, this is what they knew it was going to be.
Yeah,
right? So.
absolutely. But it's just the second round, do you just say, well, we ended up the same place the year before, lost in 5 games in the second round, blow it up, whatever that means. I mean, a lot of people want to trade Garland, and I'm open to the right kind of deal, but I don't see that happening. Orlando made their trade, so that's not going to happen there. And I am very reluctant to trade Jared Allen because of his contract situation, which is very modest by NBA standards. The NBA, by the way, average salary NBA now is almost $12 million a year. What a country!
Yeah, well, and he is a bargain.
Yeah,
like we
by
talked
that
about, very
standard, yeah.
selfless, and will do whatever helps the team win. So I wanted to ask you something real quick about the Thunder, Terry. So I thought it was a nice Cleveland tie-in, but it was the first championship for Oklahoma City in the NBA, but the second for the franchise, right? And the first one was when they were the Seattle Supersonics in 1979, coached by Lenny Wilkens, which was a neat tie-in. So,
yeah,
but I did.
Dennis Johnson was the guard. They had Lonnie Shelton,
Jack Sikma.
Yeah, they had a really nice team. And I can't remember the year before or year after. They went to the finals and lost to Washington. So, but it was back-to-back appearances. And an interesting thing back then, Bob Ryan and I, a few years later, did a book called 48 Minutes, A Night in the Life of the NBA. K.C. Jones was coaching the Celtics and Lenny was coaching the Cavs. It was Lenny's first year when he came here, and he had like Ron Harper, Brad Daugherty, Hot Rod Williams. They were all rookies, and Mark Price. And the Celtics were, I can't remember if they were defending champs for that year or had won it 2 years prior. But one of the subtext of the book was that a lot of people thought there were, quote, no coaching being done in the NBA. Well, I'm around Lenny, and Lenny was fine with the guys, but Lenny was not Mr. Motivator or whatever. Lenny was a finance major from Providence. Lenny was Mr. X's and O's. I mean, this is like, Mike Fratello. This is only in a quieter thing. But so we were going against that, and it led to um, where Lenny spent 7 hours breaking down this game between the Cavs and Boston in Joe Tate's living room. Joe Tate and I and Lenny over 2 days for that, for my part. And Casey Jones didn't kind of care one way or the other about it, but Jimmy Rogers was the assistant, and he and Bob Ryan, did the same thing, and we put the book together, which actually sold pretty well for back then. There was a baseball book called 9 Innings by Daniel Orkrent, and I stole that idea. I pitched it to Bob. My editor Jeff Newman out of Simon & Schuster loved it. So it was a fun book to do. But I think of Lenny, and then I'm watching. So now I am getting, like I mentioned, a graduate course from Earl Weaver in baseball in 1979. I'm getting graduate NBA training from Lenny Wilkens in Joe Tate's living room in my first year on the NBA beat, and just spoiled by that and see it through their eyes. And it's phenomenal to see that. And I do think sometimes what has changed over the NBA is now when you get in these tight games at the end, they throw strategy out and they just isolate their best player at the top of the key, and they don't try to do anything. And just let them create. Let them create. Well, I still don't understand why the way defense is okay. They're going to give it to the best player, let him create. Well, send two guys at him, make somebody else beat you. It's still amazing how they didn't do that. I mean, I'd have had everybody swarming over SGA. Now, OKC made it pretty hard at Halliburton. They really did. They said, if these other guards, want a Neesmith or any of these other guys want to beat me, fine.
Well, and the Pacers made it hard on Donovan Mitchell. They were sending guys
Yes,
at him
they
and
did.
fouling
They
him
went
hard and making him
at
go to
him.
the lane.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
And now I think Kenny will probably look back at a lot of those tapes and wishes they still had done more. I know they didn't have Garland, but I mean he was in a tough spot because that's where I have to admit I soured some on Ty Jerome. It's like, man, you were no help in that series, none. You had a couple shots at the end of Game 5, but he had three. I didn't know this, but a person told me there. He had three 8-second calls. In other words, he couldn't get the ball up to 4 and 8 seconds in the playoffs. That is like just hand the ball to the other team.
Yeah. No possession. So before we move on from basketball, Terry, if I'm a Cavs fan, I'm a little worried about OKC because
Sure.
they have the fourth youngest roster in the NBA. I think their average age is like 24.7.
Yes.
And if you look back at the Warriors in 2015, they won their first NBA championship and they were about an average age of just over 26. So OKC is like 1.3 years younger than that team was. And we all know what the Warriors did, but this
They
could
also,
be,
Oklahoma
yeah.
City, David, also has like 27 draft picks. I mean, I forgot how many first round picks. It's incredible. 14 or something like that coming up. Now,
So
why is
do
that
you think
important?
Cavs
Now,
fans should
hold on a
be
second.
worried about this? Yeah.
Yes, the whole league should be worried about it. Here's why. Because you could turn around and throw a bunch of those number one picks together and go get yourself a veteran. It isn't just to be drafting young. Like this year, the Cavs are starting to pay the Donovan Mitchell tariff, the picks with Utah. Doesn't bother me in the least, by the way. I used to always, the reason I mentioned tariff is because I called that starting back in 2022 the Watson tariff, which bothered me terribly because I knew Watson it was just a bad idea. I didn't know it was going to be that bad. But Oklahoma City they're young and they have all those draft picks and they got a really smart GM and they're going to be very, very tough to beat. But that said, you just don't know. In the NBA, all of a sudden, we just talked about the Achilles injuries. I wonder if the Achilles is going to become the Tommy John of the NBA.
Well, I think the reason it's important is because a lot of times you see smaller market teams come up and they have one great memorable season
Yeah.
and then it just kind of all goes away. These guys are going to be around.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, Terry, injuries happen in a series or guys get
Right.
banged up or whatever happens and things
Mm-hmm.
change quickly. One week you have Halliburton,
Yeah.
one week you don't. So yes, but in terms of just the youth and now they've won a championship and they know what's
Yeah.
involved, these guys could be a problem for the Cavs for a number of years here. So we'll see.
Yeah. I'm just looking at their draft picks. Looks like they got 7 in the next 4 years. So pick swaps, all kinds of stuff, which are great assets to have to trade. See, that's the problem with the Cavs. They're in the draft tomorrow. They got number 49 and 58, and I think they can't trade a first round pick to 2030 because remember you can't trade them 2 years in a row. You have the Tesepian rule, which is a good rule by the way. And so that you're correct on Oklahoma City being loaded.
So speaking of the draft, Terry, I just wanted to touch on it real quick. Talk about they always talk about people falling into success, and the Mavericks after the stupid trade
Yeah.
ended up with the number one pick, and they're going to take Cooper Flag. The draft is Wednesday night and Thursday night, as you mentioned, first round on Wednesday night. You think Cooper Flag's going to be good real quick before we move on?
No,
You don't.
not immediately. No, I mean good, but not great. Um, just because he's so young, he played 1 year. It's a tough league. I don't think he's going into a good situation because I know they have Davis. I guess Kyrie's coming back from whatever his latest injury is, but I'm not a fan, as they say, of him. Um, Fly's got a lot of ability, but I think it'll be years 2s and 3s where you really see who he is in the league.
I agree. I think he's going to be an all-star by year 2 or year 3. And the
Correct.
reason is, when you hear LeBron and other really respected NBA players talk about how good somebody is, like your ears perk up a little bit. And
Sure.
that's what I've been hearing about Cooper
Yeah.
Flag for 2 years, is just how blown away people are when they have
And as good
summertime
as
runs
LeBron
with him.
was,
And
he
yeah,
couldn't get the Cavs to the playoffs the first year.
yeah.
I
So
watched
anyway, I
that.
think you're right though. Given a year 2, I think he's going to be an all-star probably by year 2
And
or
also
3.
LeBron, now Flag is athletic and that, but LeBron was, a genetic marvel for that age in terms of what he could do. And you turn around and he was already driven. But so that's a great combination. And yeah, as you said, Dallas rewarded for idiocy.
All right. I guess that's it for basketball. Let's move on to the Browns real quick. There's kind of this
Okay.
interesting story around today, Terry, and it involves the NFL Players Association and the NFL. Pablo Torre, investigative reporter, found a lot of this stuff out. But basically, long story short, and it's got some Cleveland threads to it, interestingly enough. After the Deshaun Watson trade happened and the Browns gave him the fully guaranteed $230 million contract, there was an NFL owners meeting soon after that, and there was a lot of speculation and going around that the owners basically said, "Hey, don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
we don't want these large guaranteed contracts, so pull back on that." And of course, the Players Association would be like, "Well, that's collusion. You have to allow free market, bidding to happen. If a team wants to give a fully guaranteed deal, give a fully guaranteed deal." But there's some news today. I don't know if you want to kind of try to explain it real quick, or we can get into some of this. We can
Well,
a couple of minutes
it,
talking
it
about it.
kind of looks at how you view this. The view of the owners would be, yeah, we talked about not giving out stupid contracts, guaranteed contracts, or whatever, but we didn't legislate against it. The players would say, yes, you didn't legislate against it, but you made a tremendous amount of internal pressure not to give. You didn't give a full guaranteed contract to Lamar Jackson, to a lot of these other guys,
Russell
to Joe
Wilson.
Burrow. There's one you would think. Now, some guys have gotten more guaranteed money than Watson. Dak Prescott, I believe, did, but the contracts are not fully guaranteed. Now, the owners would come back and say, look, whether it's fully guaranteed or not, Dak Prescott got more guaranteed money, or whether his contract rather with 300 million or whatever, he still ended up with more guaranteed money than Watson. And I remember after Watson got the 5 years, 230 million guarantee. By the way, you know why it's 230 instead of 225 for 5? Because 225 for 5, you go, well, that's kind of a rounder number. 230 is because it was 46 million a year, and at that point, the average salary for Patrick Mahomes was how much, David? What would you guess?
45.
You got
Right?
it. Bragging rights for the agent. Always watch those weird numbers. I forgot how much Frankie Lindor's contract was. I don't know, 361 million or whatever it was. It was 1 million more than Tatis got from San Diego at that point. When you see an odd number like that, you could always look and I learned to see what's behind it. I think it's interesting, but I don't think it goes anywhere, David. I just don't see how there's any kind of.
No, it doesn't. I think the people who have been writing about this, part of the deal was the arbitrator. They had there was a lawsuit and some
Yeah.
hearings, and the owners are like, "Listen, we didn't collude to make this not happen." And the players are like, "Yes, you did." Like, and
Hmm.
so the arbitrator basically said, "Yeah, you shouldn't have been doing what you're doing, but there was no collusion here." So the
Yeah.
NFL got off and didn't have to pay a bunch of damages. But I think part of the problem, and I think a lot of the issue, is that the Players Association has kept this quiet and didn't make a big deal
Sure.
out of it. Whereas they could have let other players know that they thought this might be happening, and there could have been some other people jumping in with some lawsuits or complaints or some things they might have noticed. But one of the things was that J.C. Treader, the former Browns center, who was the president of the Players Association, was in the testimony for this, lawsuit that the arbitrator was ruling on, calling Russell Wilson like a wuss for not demanding guaranteed money after Deshaun Watson got his money, and the players union didn't want that to come out, that the head of the Players Association was ripping one of the players for not getting guaranteed money. That would have been a very awkward thing for JC Tretter and the Players Association. And so that's where kind of the drama is coming from on a lot of this, right? That
now
they didn't want that to get out.
All right, an interesting thing though that's going on is while the football had these basically contracts partially guaranteed or whatever, it has leaked into the other sports where the contracts in the NBA are not as fully guaranteed. A friend of mine is a longtime agent in the NBA. He just recently retired. And he said, these guys are signing contracts like I would never sign my guys. He said, look, all right, I'm going to what's the point of taking $100 million for 5 and only $65 million is guaranteed? Tell you what, give me 60 for 3. Guarantee me the $20 million for 3 years. Go shorter. He said, you're playing right in because the teams want to spread that contract out longer because especially in sports such as football and basketball, not only does money work less over time, but also the salary cap goes up. So it makes it more palatable. He goes, what do you want to help them for? I mean, this is a guy, you'll like this. So he was negotiating a contract with the Cavs, he told me. And it wasn't with the owner, but it was with one of the GMs way in the past. And he said, the guy said, well, what's the difference between, 58 and 62 million, what's a couple million at this point, either way? And the agent said, well, I absolutely agree. And your owner's worth a lot more than my guy. So what's the difference? Just give it to us.
Just give it to him. Yeah.
Who's got less?
Yeah, that's a good one to use with car salesmen when you go in. It's like, hey, you know what? You really should buy this car. It's not worth not getting it for $500. And you can just say like, yeah, well,
what's the difference?
You're right. It's not worth it.
Give it to me. Give it to me. Whoever you like, whatever name, whatever car dealer. But it's because he just said they sit there and listen to these stupid arguments. And his point was, you're better off going shorter, fully guaranteed, and getting to the thing there. And he said, instead, he called it leaking NFLism into the NBA, where they're doing a lot of these contracts that are not fully guaranteed. I remember the contract that Laurie Markkanen signed with the Cavs, and the last year there, I think it's been redone, was like 40% guaranteed. Because he was talking about that guy. He goes, why? Forget it. Give me the 3 guaranteed, And so that's a negotiating ploy. We all should be in this position where we're arguing over millions of dollars in guarantees, but it's going, in other words, the other way. Baseball's got all kinds of different ways now. Not all the Stars contracts are fully guaranteed, but some of these others are not. They're partial guarantees, or they're the buyout, basically the last year. And he says, what do I want to get buyed out of the last year of at a bargain rate? Just let me be a free agent earlier. He said, that's really what you want. Why do I want to help them?
Yeah. Well, anyway, a little mini drama there, and again, it's
and a lesson in agenting. So you're right, David. Next time you're at the car dealer, he says, "What's $1,000 either way on my Ford pickup?" That's correct. I think Ford's got more money than I do.
Yeah, that happened to me one time. The car only had one key fob, and the guy goes, "Well, it's only $150. Like, it's no big deal. You should go ahead and get the car." And I said, "Yeah, well, that's right. Throw in the $150. I'll get the car."
Yeah, right. Yeah, give me it's like,
yeah, give me the other key fob.
You're gonna mess up this deal. You're gonna screw up your commission for a key fob. I mean, really.
Yeah, but anyway, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future of guaranteed contracts. And we all, man, the baseball arbitration, not arbitration, but the collusion ruling 10 or 15 years ago, where they proved it. The players made millions and millions in the wake of that, when they found out the owners were working together to keep the salaries down.
Quite a long time ago, because one of the players that was involved in that was Mike Hargrove. And I think it's when he was playing Texas or somewhere. I forgot what it was, but yeah, he was one of the guys.
I think there was a more recent one too. That might have been the first one. There might have been another one, but anyway, it's always interesting to watch the guaranteed money and.
Yeah, well, those guys in baseball, they're a different breed now. They fight for their their cash.
They're leading the way in terms of player rights, as they have for decades, right?
For decades, yeah. Marvin Miller, I had his home phone, and the really delightful guy to talk to. But he would just
Real
say the
quick, Terry,
most.
Marvin Miller was the head of the players union and was a hard negotiator. I just want to make sure for people who don't remember
And
who that is.
he's the guy that brought free agency in and all that. He is the godfather of modern baseball free agency, like it or not. And he used to negotiate for, I forgot what union it was, with GE and those others. But what he was the most like delightful guy, and he would just say, I could really not, sometimes I sit in these things and I tell the owners, well, you must think we're stupid. We're not that stupid. Just like that kind of way. He would just do that. He goes, I wasn't pounding the table. He goes, but we're not doing it. I mean, we don't want to sit out, but we'll sit out. Now you got to understand. I'm serious. My guys are serious. Just in that kind of voice. And he would always explain, he would say things like my other friend, the agent, who, by the way, loves Marvin Miller. He had studied him. It's like, why is it that when you're saying it doesn't matter one way to you? Well, you got more money. My guys, and of course, Marvin would always make like everybody was still working, at Walmart or somewhere, or on the line at U.S. Steel. Well, we're a bunch of working stiffs here. I'm like, well, Marvin, not everybody. But it was interesting to listen to them and his approach to it, as opposed to some of these other guys pounding the table and screaming. It was the classic, speak softly and carry a big stick, the stick being that the players trusted him implicitly. And once he got free agent for them, they would do anything he told them.
And a well-earned reputation as a quiet assassin.
Yes, he was.
They hated negotiating with him.
Oh, they did, because they couldn't make him mad. They couldn't budge him. He was also like, he would just go on all night, there. He wouldn't get tired. It was and he was very smart in how he used the media so much better. The owners were always outraged, and he sounded calm and reasonable, even if he was saying some things that sort of seemed outrageous.
All right. Well, there's probably enough contract stuff for one day, but yeah, but that's very interesting to me, and kind of the behind the scenes look at how this all works. So thanks for some of that background, Terry, and for bringing up the topic. So, all right, we have been reading some listener emails about Tom Hamilton is going to be honored in Cooperstown on Baseball Hall of Fame weekend, which is the 25th, 26th, and 27th. Man, that's only a month away. But we've been getting some really great stories. If you want to send one in about memories of Tom Hamilton, listening to him do games, or maybe somewhere you met him one time, send that all into sports@cleveland.com. You can put Tom Hamilton in the subject line, or Terry's Talkin Tom Hamilton, any combination of that, and we'll try to get it on an upcoming podcast. Here's one today from Steve. And Steve has emailed us, and he says, hey, Terry and David, in regards to stories about Tom Hamilton, I don't really have any specific anecdotes, but more just a general praise for his phenomenal and revered presence as the voice of Cleveland baseball amongst my sports watching friend group. Back in the 90s, when I made many drives across the country to the other side of the Great Plains, it was comforting to tune into MLB games of the region and just listen in on other broadcasts. Setting my bias aside as best as I could, Hamilton was ridiculously far superior to anyone any other team was using. He just paints a picture of exactly what is going on so impeccably, and the way he can convey the tone of a game, like whether the Guardians are mounting a comeback, a pitcher is in a strikeout groove, or the game is a blowout, he does so with just inflection in his calls. In the early 2000s, I was able to bring XM radio along with me on vacations and listen to Hammy call Tribe games throughout. His calls on Hafner blasts, adding a sweet cherry on top of a beautiful vacation day on a lake somewhere. Such was our fandom of Hammy that somewhere in my house, misplaced during a move, I think, I had an audio cassette. Yes, an actual 90-minute audio cassette filled with recorded Hammy calls of exciting games during the Bob Wickman years, and including that epic comeback against Seattle, which I listened to on the drive back from New Mexico and got home just as they won, and then was able to record the recap. One of our favorite parts of Hamilton's abilities is his mastery of weaving hilarious and often scathing sarcasm into the play-by-play. He is truly unparalleled at this. One time when the Tribe was playing against ex-teammate Milton Bradley, Bradley had to leave the game because of an injury sustained on a play, and Hamilton said something along the lines of, Bradley no doubt got injured patting himself on the back. In another more recent, relatively languid and boring game in which the home plate ump missed a couple of calls badly, Hamilton said of the ump in a very assuming conversational tone, and so will be getting up at 8:30 tomorrow morning to go to the optometrist to check and see if his eyes are working properly. Those are two of thousands of masterful and playful jabs and quips he just rolls out there during play-by-play to make the radio experience that much more enjoyable. Tom Hamilton is truly a master and a Cleveland treasure. My friends and I wish him congratulations. So thanks for that, Steve.
All that's true because Robert and I have Sirius XM. And so sometimes we're out of town, you turn them in and you listen to the other broadcasters, and there's a huge difference. Now, we did hear John Miller out of San Francisco. He was excellent. But for the most part, they don't come close. I don't know who the guys were doing the Twins. This was when we were in Wyoming. It's like, will you guys ever recap what just happened? Tom never says something, or they'll say this on the radio. Well, Cleveland is ahead 5-2 on a couple of 2-run home runs. They don't say who. What, you don't have time to say, who hit them? The mistake a lot of broadcasters make, and I went to lunch one time because Tom asked me to set up a lunch with him and Joe Tate, was recap. People are not sitting in there listening to you all day or all night. And especially they're driving, and the baseball and the radio is a working soundtrack. You must recap. And if you listen to Cleveland, Rosie does it too. They really recap. That's a big thing that I think both of them grew up. Rosie grew up doing the games in the minor leagues for the Buffalo Bisons, AAA. And they came up the hard way through the minors. And they know what what listeners want to hear.
So true. And it's one of those things where you think people are listening to the whole game from start to finish, and they're always coming and going, like you said, Terry. Yeah. And we all know what that's about. So, all right, again, if you want to send us some Tom Hamilton stories, sports@cleveland.com, send us an email, and we will keep reading these up through the end of next month. So, all right, we good, Terry? Anything else you want to mention real quick? All right, don't forget to check out Terry's Faith in You column. It's every Saturday morning online on cleveland.com and every Sunday in the Plain Dealer. We'll be back next week with another edition of Terry's Talk.